Hello everybody and welcome back to another Doctor Who Big Finish audio drama review. In today's review I'm going to be taking a look at the first box set as part of a brand new series from Big Finish, and it is the Second Doctor Adventures, featuring Michael Trouten as the Second Doctor in Beyond the War Games. This release is available to order now on the Big Finish website. The physical CD and download can be purchased for £19.99, or you can purchase the download by itself for £16.99. This release can also be purchased as part of a bundle alongside some other classic Doctor Who audio drama releases. So this is of course a rather exciting brand new start for Big Finish as we delve into the Second Doctor era within the full cast audio drama format, as opposed to the companion chronicle or the early adventures series. So this box set does in fact feature two stories, the first of which is The Final Beginning as written by Mark Wright and Nicholas Briggs, and the second episode is Wrath of the Ice Warriors as written by Andrew Smith. The Final Beginning kicks off this rather interesting era for the Second Doctor, in what is essentially Season 6B. It's an area for which that I'm quite unfamiliar with when it comes to its history. However, I was quite excited to see how the Second Doctor was going to be portrayed. Essentially, we see the Second Doctor acting as agent as part of the Celestial Intervention Agency, between the events of the War Games and Spearhead from Space being the Third Doctor's debut story. The first thing that I would like to mention for this episode is that on the Big Finish website it does state that The Final Beginning is listed as a 4-part story, which is indeed true. However, the episodes themselves are roughly 15 minutes long, meaning the whole story is just over 1 hour in length. And I say this because I did in fact go into this story thinking it was going to be the usual 4 parts, 30 minutes long, so a 2-hour story, very much like the monthly range. However, that is not the case. What this does achieve is a rather fast-paced story which presents all you need to know about the concept of this series, introducing the characters, the Doctor's predicament, as well as some lovely tributes to the Second Doctor's era on TV. The smaller episode format is quite handy, allowing the listener to experience the story in bite-sized chunks, but I've never really encountered it before as a part of a Doctor Who release at least, so I did question why it was used for this box set rather than simply utilising 2 30-minute parts. That said, however, because it is 15 minutes per episode, it does mean that every 15 minutes we are kind of treated to a cliffhanger, which does lead to quite a lot of suspense and lots of drama, so I suppose it does have its positives. The serial actually feels rather grand, as if it's touching the surface of something much, much bigger. Emma Noakes in particular is a standout character. She has a lot of power, a lot of hold over the Doctor, as well as having that air of mystery about her. We will definitely be seeing more of her in the future episodes of this series, I imagine, and I can't wait to see what they do next with her character. She seems to be the biggest challenge that this Doctor effectively has to face, because she's the person who holds all the power. Effectively, she is holding the Doctor on some puppet strings. I do also really like Michael Trouten as the Second Doctor. I previously got a glimpse of his portrayal within the Third Doctor Adventures release The Annihilators, which I did review earlier this year, and he has a brilliant caring warmth, but also the agitated frustration as seen within the War Games as a result of him essentially being under the Time Lord's control. Much like Stephen Noonan's interpretation of the First Doctor, this is almost a new regenerated era for 60s Who, which really excites me, especially as a Big Finish listener who never really tends to listen to the early adventures or the companion chronicles. I personally think it works very well within the audio drama format. However, if you aren't a fan of recasting, then this set will not be worth your attention, as Michael does of course portray a rather integral role within this series, and the second episode of the set also features John Coleshaw as the Brigadier. As seen on the credits for this story, this episode is technically a Dalek story, but the Daleks do remain rather in the shadows throughout. It returns to the climax of evil of the Daleks, battling the Doctor's actions and the destruction of the Daleks. The echoes of lines from past serials I think really work to bring this rather disorientated alien landscape to life. The listener shares that uncertainty along with the Second Doctor. Whilst challenging the Doctor's past, we also tease the future, and that is something that I really do like. It is a little bit of fan service. Of course, there is a number of moments which do directly also reference the War War Games and Evil of the Daleks, with some quotes being dropped in, but also into the Third Doctor era as well. And it does hop about a bit, but I did quite like it. It kind of made a rather bold statement to start off this series, and I kind of expected similar things to continue into episode 2. However, that didn't really happen, as I'll go on to a little bit later on. But I imagine if you like Evil of the Daleks as a story, this episode will be a great one to listen to, because you do have the recreation of Do Not Fight in here and all of that, and the Daleks sound great in this episode as well. And you also have a few direct quotes from the War Games, the trial sequence stuff, which I quite liked as well. Of course, this set is part of Big Finish's new box set per incarnation format, which has seen a shift in how stories are formatted, with most of the series dropping the 4th hour of audio drama content. Personally, I think that perhaps this episode would have benefited from being 3 parts of half an hour long each, just so we could see some of the ideas being explored a little bit further. But as an opener, I really enjoyed it, and it shows certain potential for this series in the future. The Wrath of the Ice Warriors continues the authentic style of 60s Who. This time we have the return of the usual 4-part 30-minute episode format, as the Second Doctor unites once more with the Brigadier for a suspected invasion story. By having one episode pay tribute to Evil of the Daleks, and then this episode reunite the Second Doctor with the Ice Warriors, it makes it really easy to evoke the style of this era, seeing 2 and the Brig pick up from where they left off within the invasion. It means that we are constantly calling back to the TV episodes, and it's kind of nice, especially given that a lot of the Second Doctor era is of course missing. The Celestial Intervention Agency pilot the TARDIS to Cape Wrath in Scotland, where the Doctor soon realises that there is a whole fleet of ships in orbit by Jupiter, and a weird repeating signal coming from Earth. An Ice Warrior called Scar is looking for a way to try and make contact on Earth back to his people, but this proves difficult, especially when UNIT are attempting to capture him in the remote Scottish countryside. The location of this story is brought to life well, and I like the fact that this story focuses more on the Ice Warriors rather than simply doing a routine UNIT story. I think by doing this, it allows us to at first initially focus on Scar, the Ice Warrior, and then as the episode progresses, we start to see a few more Ice Warriors creeping in, including the Empress as well. So we kind of start with one, and then we see the society almost that he comes from, which I think is a good way to build the plot of the episode, and allows it to flow quite naturally. Lucy Goldie is brilliant in the companion role as local Glaswegian painter Sheena Flynn. She's seemingly quite fearless when faced with the unknown, and this really allows Michael Trouten to excel as the Second Doctor with someone to really play off and explain things to. Michael presents the Second Doctor as perhaps a little bit lonely, with both serials acknowledging the departure of Zoe and Jamie very recently, again being beyond the Doctor's control. We have this rather helpless incarnation, and it's interesting seeing throughout this episode how the relationship between the Doctor and various characters differs, because he almost has this higher power to answer to, and who he decides to keep that information from, simply to make things a bit simpler. One of the oddest things about this story in my eyes as a listener is that there wasn't particularly too much within this episode which explores the Doctor's agency role within the CIA. There is a brief mention here and there saying that he's currently working for a higher power and that his hands are a little bit tied somewhat, but other than that there isn't particularly much of this from a plot perspective, which as a listener I did want to see more of, as I absolutely loved episode 1 and what that had to offer. And then as we come into this story, it does kind of feel like we have an episode that could essentially belong within any other range with the Second Doctor in, and not particularly the Second Doctor in season 6B. I suspect that is probably because we are still in the early origins of this series, and perhaps they wanted episode 1 to maybe present the main idea of the series and then have a more relaxed episode 2. I suspect that perhaps as this series develops, we will see more from a plot perspective involving the CIA, without revealing too much. Put it this way, there is a little thing in this story which suggests that we're going to get more in this format, and that will of course be coming in 2023. John Culshaw is as excellent as ever as the Brigadier, and Unit as a whole does feel very amateur within this story. They are still within their early days of development. It's almost a bit like a prequel to the Third Doctor era, where they kind of have a bit more practice with dealing with aliens and the extraterrestrial. So for example, throughout this episode, we have the Brigadier actually witnessing the TARDIS dematerialising for the first ever time, which is quite a bold moment, especially given how the Brigadier has had such an intertwined relationship with the Doctor, which has surpassed through so many different incarnations by this point. We do have a number of Ice Warriors throughout this story, including Scar, as portrayed by Mark Elstob, as well as the Martian royalty known as the Lady Zelina, as portrayed by Katie Manning. This allows us to kind of see the life of this particular fleet and how they've settled on Earth for quite some time before the events of this story, having left Mars, as well as this one sole aim to return to Mars and reclaim some power. I can't really say too much else about the Ice Warriors and their involvement throughout this story, because ultimately spoilers and I will be ruining the episode itself, but overall I think the episode is in fact quite simple to follow. I think it's one of those very easy stories that you can listen to one episode at a time, maybe even on a commute or something like that. It's certainly not a really complex story that requires all your attention. I think that is solely down to the fact that the characters are rather well written. Of course, they all leap off the page, they all feel very realistic, the fact that we've met some of these characters before as well, and those dynamics are kind of being revisited, which makes this story very enjoyable. But the Ice Warriors are also quite an interesting foe, which have cropped up in Doctor Who a few times. The fact that they're neighbours to Earth also makes them quite interesting, and this episode kind of explores that a bit more, and it's nice being able to see an episode which focuses on two races which are on two planets which are technically, in the grand scheme of things, quite close together within the universe. So there we have it, that is my review of Beyond the War Games, featuring Michael Trouten as the second Doctor. Of course, very much like The Outlaws, of course, featuring Stephen Noonan as the first Doctor, as well as the current third Doctor adventures. As always, if you aren't a fan of recasting, then this series will not be for you. But if you're somebody who is a little bit more accepting of it, if you're somebody who wants to experience something from Big Finish, in particular involving 60s Doctor Who, that is a bit different to usual, involving new characters and allowing Big Finish to do different things, then this is certainly a series for you. I think definitely the opening episode of this set excites me as to where this series is going to go next. I like the fact that we're referencing multiple points within the Doctor Who timeline, both from at this point within the series, from the present, the past, and the future. And of course the Ice Warrior story, I did really enjoy it. I thought it was fun, I thought it was nice, great locations, great characters, but I would have really liked to see a bit more CIA involvement, just to make it a bit more specific to the events of Season 6B, because at this point within this series, I don't quite know how many episodes or how many box sets we are going to have focusing on this area, but who knows, only time will tell. So thank you very much for watching this review. I really hope you have enjoyed it. Do of course stay tuned on thehostproductions Productions for regular Big Finish audio drama reviews. Have a nice day. I shall see you all next time.